So tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming peer recovery specialists, and kind of what were some of the things that were most helpful to you as you navigated your recovery journey that you now try to kind of infuse into your work? Maybe, yeah, we'll just go.
So I was a member of Rams in Recovery, and the opportunity presented itself to work for through AmeriCorps to get my certification and work with others. And it was something that at that time I had been in early recovery, maybe a few months, and I had kind of realized for the entirety of my life that I had a knack for helping people and just had that tendency, but I really needed to help myself first. And so I think that working for Rams in Recovery was, I think looking back now, it's just all the different things that it had taught me and all the things that it brought to light, the people that I met, the diversity, just some of that stuff has been so formative to my future. And one thing I think that stands out to me in my recovery journey is instead of following these doctrines or that the 12 steps and things like that aren't helpful, they are really helpful, and I do encourage peers to use them, but I think also following your own intuition, and I think like advocating for myself and looking deep inside and realizing like what is true for me, not like just following something blindly, because I think feeling powerless is something that I felt in active addiction, and so like regaining my power and feeling powerful to speak up and know what's right for me, that's something that I've taken from my own recovery, and I also encourage other people to look within themselves and find the truth within themselves, because I do believe that we all know instinctually what's right for us. It's just a matter of figuring it out. And also I'm passionate about the holistic approach to healing, whether it's from addiction or mental health issues, addressing the body, the mind, and the spirit to just bring about constant healing, because we're all, we go through traumas daily, so it's really just a constant approach to healing and to living. Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
You did a great job. I would actually have to echo a lot of that. I come from a background where I have experienced a lot of trauma. So I have CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And if you're familiar with the ACEs study, the ACEs scores, raise your hand if you're familiar with ACEs. Yes, of course. Well, we all are. It's a recovery conference. There's only one of those that I have not experienced from my childhood. So that made me more likely to experience things like health problems or substance use. I do not have a substance use disorder. However, I have a sexual compulsion disorder, which is probably linked to the fact that I was not diagnosed with ADHD until last year. I'm 42 years old. I wasn't diagnosed until I was 41, most likely because I'm female-bodied. And I wasn't diagnosed with autism until I was 33, most likely because I'm female-bodied. And so there are some gaps that we're already seeing as we're talking about this. And I think that with my journey, which comes from a history of depression and anxiety and trauma, when I experienced a really big trough in depression, and it led to suicidal ideation and an attempt in 2020, and I reached out for support, and I came to a trauma recovery organization, and they helped me. And I was already a life coach at that time. They said, well, have you heard about peer recovery specialists? It had so many parallels to the work that I had already been doing to try to help people who were like me, who were members of the LGBTQIA plus community, who were neurodivergent, who weren't getting support. And so it seemed like a natural step to pursue that training and pursue that work and pursue that healing. And like you said, it's all about that holistic approach. Trauma is the thing that leads us to make decisions in our lives that may not be healthy for us. And shame, and a shame-based society in which we live, well, those are the things that can lead us to make decisions that might traumatize other people or continue to do things that hurt ourselves. So I feel passionate about helping people reach their potential and feel safe in their bodies and in their minds and in their spirits and reach goals that they want for themselves with and in spite of the things that they struggle with. So that's been pretty much my journey. I always do that.
Let's see. I started my recovery journey back in 2009, and I fully acknowledge my privilege with access to treatment. I went to treatment for substance use disorder and began my recovery journey a while ago. And as my sobriety lengthened and my recovery capital continued to build, I reestablished my life again through multiple services that I received. And I was working a fantastic job with a big company. I got married, I owned a home again, and all of the brilliant things about life became possible to me. However, I was silently dying of something else. I really thought that my life couldn't truly begin until I was as thin as possible. And the lengths that I went to try to lose weight and fit in and feel comfortable in my own skin. What a beautiful thing recovery is, right? And one of the gifts that we have is feeling like we belong and comfortable in our own skin. Well, that was something that I was silently struggling with. And I tried everything, all the prescribed diets, all the prescribed exercise, and this is something that I've been dealing with my entire life. So this was something that I was dealing with before my substance use became an issue for me. And I decided that the only way I could solve that problem was to take pills that would help me with that. And like a good person that has substance use disorder, one became many, and I fell back into consequences of substance use again. I started my recovery 2.0 a couple of years ago. I accessed treatment for my eating disorder, and that's really what I am here to help identify, that particular gap, that my understanding of the depth of recovery has truly been unleashed because of this work that I've started. And I've learned through the journey of other people and the work that I get to do at Rams in Recovery that I am free to be who I am today, regardless of how much I weigh or what I wear, and it is also a right to feel comfortable in our own skin. And that's my journey to be a peer recovery specialist.
Hi, my journey to be a peer recovery specialist. My journey started in jails and institutions. Being incarcerated, I started a program when I was incarcerated, and when I left incarceration, I went from what they call a bed to bed to a treatment center. I had never in my life been to, was offered a treatment center, and I had been in and out of jails and institutions for a good part of my life. When I went to the institution, to the treatment center, I started learning a lot of things about myself. It was like a 90-day program. I don't think they had the treatment centers that long anymore, but that really helped me a whole lot. Just learning about myself and my behaviors. Me wanting to be a peer recovery specialist was when I was asked to facilitate in a jail setting. And when I went, I could see myself in those seats, and it just gave me sort of like a purpose to help. When I knew in recovery, it's like you want everybody to just like get it. Once I basically surrendered, my base is Narcotics Anonymous, but I frequent different paths of recovery, especially working as a peer recovery specialist, because everybody is, every individual is it may not be a good fit, whatever. But working with those individuals and seeing them thrive, coming out and actually thriving, I truly believe in recovery inside institutions, jails, and just giving them that base. I was really surprised that a lot of the individuals never even heard of recovery or any of the groups or self-help groups or anything like that. And so those are some of the things that helped me navigate in my recovery was support. I had a lot of support in my self-help programs, 12-step as well as traditional. Going back to school, it helped me to I just kind of wanted to know more about helping individuals. I started advocating for myself. I am a nursing assistant, and I had been one for a long time, and when I got incarcerated, they took my license, and so I had to advocate for myself, and that's one thing that I do for my peers is to advocate for them for better, housing and, just a better relationship with, with others. And then I have a little bit of age with it, so I have some type of wisdom. I mean, we're not born addicts, and I've had homes and lost them. I've had vehicles and lost them. And so when I sit and I look at some of the younger individuals and I just listen, basically. And just listening, I basically what I wanted someone to do for me was to just listen. And that's, that's how I started my journey, because there were people that were like me that listened to, just the inside things. Just picking up, things that, being attentively listening, not just asking me questions and okay, we're gonna do this, it's just systematic. And so that's some of the things that were most helpful for me, and that's some of the things that I do as a peer recovery specialist is listen actively to my clients.
Awesome. And I'm going to start with you on this one, Peggy. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the roles that you, the gaps that you see in services from the current roles that you're in? So what are some of the things that stand out to you about, places where we're not meeting people's needs, and that advocacy that you talked about? What are some of those key areas that you help advocate for clients or support clients and students or clients in advocating for themselves?
Some of the gaps are, like I was saying earlier, just being, some of the organizations are really just systematic, and some of the gaps is the underlying issues that they have, some of the underlying issues that, like the housing and food, and mainly some of the mental health issues. I am a person in recovery with mental health and substance use disorders, and just some of the services, some of the gaps are just, like they were saying earlier, just treating one thing at a time. It's just abstinence and that's it, and not going to outside communities, not dealing with where I'm employed. It's just not, the clients are not, they can't go anywhere else outside. It's just, it's the services. My services as being a peer recovery specialist is basically not really being a peer recovery specialist. It's just dealing with a lot of different groups. You know, it's just a one-on-one warmth that that I see, you know, are some of the gaps in the services.
Awesome. Can-
I think that, and just to piggyback off what Peggy said, that when working with an individual through peer coaching and in my lived experience, I think a lot of the gap that I witnessed refers back to what I just previously talked about, that there's an issue where there's untreated or undiagnosed or undiscussed issues around body image and eating disorders in a space where folks are also trying to recover from substance use. And we've talked a lot about it over the last couple of days about dealing with trauma and dealing with dual diagnosis, but helping people show up and be able to navigate difficult relationships again without using substances, and being able to have a space to talk about how they're feeling about body image and being able to show up as their whole self. And I've also experienced a complete topic change, but I do believe that there is a gap in services with helping people that are or are currently navigating the criminal justice system, along with everything else that they're trying to deal with and manage in their lives, and how we can help people. It's just an administrative nightmare, along with all the other things that people are trying to get to help stabilize their recovery.
So the conversation for the last couple of years on an organizational level has been about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. And then we added justice because we figured out that equity was not enough, right? We had to change the system because justice is really the solution. Changing the system is really the solution. But a lot of organizations just aren't there. A lot of organizations haven't even gotten to the equity part yet and aren't even having those conversations. So yes, it is awesome that our pronouns are here. But in my training to become a trainer, to teach other people to become PRS, this was the person who introduced themselves with the pronoun, and one of the only few other than Tom in the room. And so when I introduced myself as they, them, I was othered. And I'm neurodivergent, and I grew up othered. And so imagine coming into recovery spaces and you're already othered because of parts of your identity. And then you're trying to ask for help. So organizations don't seem to be prepared to have discussions about trans issues, to have discussions about LGBTQIA plus issues in general, and to support these people on an individual basis without going, oh wait, we've got the trans person on staff. We have somebody who uses pronouns. Well, we all use pronouns, right? So, and then you've got neurodivergence. Well, in the last organization I worked for, oh, you have medical trauma because you're neurodivergent and, you know, doctors and weirdness. So let me give them all to you. We don't have people who are willing to put in the time and the effort to learn and expand. Now, obviously, we're all here because we're learning and expanding, but you have to take this beyond, and that's where the gap is. Because yes, it's fun to be here and learn, but if you're not taking it beyond this conference and to your organizations and having those conversations and being direct and getting a little hardcore about it and passionate about it, that's a gap. Because people are falling through the cracks, and people who want help aren't getting help because of parts of their identities. And we are here to help the whole person. So in my role as a PRS, and as my role as a life coach, and my role as somebody who does nerdy IT stuff, I'm trying to find ways to help people who've fallen through the cracks, because I did for so long. And I'm still falling through the cracks in a lot of ways. And it's hard to sit up here and go like, well, hey, I'm the non-binary autistic person with autism. But I get to say I'm autistic. Person with ADHD as the representative of that element to talk about that. You know, we're all up here to talk about our platform. So have those conversations. Like, that's the gap, is that we're not having the conversations, we're not being direct, we're not talking about the broken stair. When we see the problem, we're not talking about it. Those are the gaps that I see, is that people with identities that are not ours are not supported because we're not recognizing our privilege, we're not recognizing that people have different cultural needs, different physical needs, different mental health needs than our own, and we're just not doing the work. And if you're here, you want to do the work. So continue to do the work and be passionate and walk in compassion.
And so much that has been shared is something that I really feel passionate about. So just to, I guess, bring up some new topics, or tied to this really, I think like when we talk about gaps, we wonder, or I wonder why are there gaps? And I think it's because of stigma. And one thing being trained in a peer recovery specialist role first and then going to graduate school for counseling, and assuming that every professor, every practitioner is going to be like updated on language and updated on science, but they're not. Like after doing the recovery ally trainings with Tom, like that was my personal mission, was to politely and in the most appropriate way, like correct people when they're saying substance abuse or calling somebody an addict, and things like that still happen. Not only I've heard it from, like I said, practitioners, but professors that are teaching myself and my other classmates. So it's just disheartening to see it. And I love my program, don't get me wrong, but I think it just speaks to like the deep, deep pervasive stigma that exists in mental health surrounding addiction. And I think we have it separate. We put it in a different category. It's a mental health disorder. It's in the DSM as substance use disorder, not abuse. That was the term that we retired 13 years ago. Sorry, in 2013 was when the newest DSM came out. And I think to people's credit, part of the issue there is that the institutions, the certifications still use that term. And so people think it's okay, but it takes somebody that is in recovery to maybe speak out, and that's me a lot of the time, all the time, to just say, like, to realize how disparaging that term is. And not only for us as people in recovery, for the other population that I work with, people that are abused, it's like that's disparaging to them too, because we're talking about a person abusing a substance and then real abuse that people experience. So that's been my personal mission, is to just talk about language and make sure everyone's on the same page with that. I think also because of the stigma, like the science, just continued education, I think, is another gap for professors, for mental health people to just understand that it's a mental health disorder and there's causes and there's treatments, and it's not a moral dilemma. And I know, you know, we struggle with that as a society, just kind of erasing that idea. But it's still very much there. It's still very pervasive. Another thing I think, I lost my train of thought. All right, we'll go to my third point, which is that I would really love, and I don't know if this has so much to do with services like, or as like support groups, but I love the fact that I'm a person in recovery because I have these places that I can go. I can look up a meeting, I can go to it, I can meet people, I can even run into old friends, and I have that community. But people that are in recovery from mental health disorders don't have that community. And I just would really love if there was the same thing. People that, you know, struggle with suicidal ideation, or people that struggle with depression, people that struggle with eating disorders, disordered eating. I think that there should be those meetings and those groups to talk and support each other and to do our work together, do our work separate, come together, meet, just like the same that there is for recovery. I just really wish that there was something like that for mental health, for the other side of mental health as well.
Awesome. Thanks to all of you. And you really perfectly set up the next question, which is about, you know, there's still a lot of stigma, as you mentioned, among professionals, among practitioners, around substance use disorder and recovery, right? Like one of the things that I hear from folks all the time that work as professionals in this field, right? Peer recovery support specialists are professional mental health substance use providers, that we are often looked on as clients with jobs, you know, and right, that's stigma. And so I'm curious from you all about, like, how have you seen that impact you or coworkers in recovery, and what are some of the things that maybe you've appreciated that coworkers or allies have done to make the environment more recovery friendly or recovery ready workplace?
Well, there aren't that many people in my program or where I work that are vocal. I have one person that is my classmate that's close, I'm close with, but they actually aren't super vocal about being in recovery. And I think that that's one thing that I would love to see more of, is people being open and honest about their struggles. And I think those identities that we hold that are invisible, and like being like, I'm another representative of the ADHD community, was diagnosed 2 years ago. And I think those things, like just seeing the people, seeing the diversity of what we can be in the community, and that we're not just clients, we're practitioners. And also, not only are we practitioners, I think, in my opinion, I'm a little biased, but I think that we're the best to be practitioners. And like, that was my opinion before going to school, but even after getting, you know, being almost through with my education, it still rings true to me that, like, working with clients, finally, one of the things, like the aspects of, like the things that I can identify in clients and things that I can help them with are the things that are true to me, or things that I've overcome. And I use like the technical, the theories, the approaches to, you know, focus on the healing, but to identify the problems and to relate and have that therapeutic connection, that's something that comes from my lived experiences. And so that's something that my classmates and other fellow people in the field maybe don't have. And I look at that as a disadvantage, honestly. I'm like, hey, over here, like, I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think that that's why we should speak up more about it. Yeah, I think I'll say that. That's it.
I just want to say that if you're not on mental health TikTok, you're missing out on a wide world. There's substance use disorder TikTok, there's ADHD TikTok, there's ADHD TikTok, which is the spicy neurodivergence where you have autism and ADHD like I do. I like the term spicy neurodivergence. It makes me kind of happy. And, you know, as a Xennial, which is the millennial Gen X crossover, being on TikTok in 2020 was not what I expected that I would be doing with my pandemic time, but I got an ADHD diagnosis and came out as non-binary, so that was cool. However, I think that some of the things that I really see that people in the spaces I've been in have done that were a real boon to just recovery work in general were, like you said, speaking out about the things that they're in recovery for, not just saying I'm in long-term recovery, but like Peggy said, I'm in long-term recovery for this, for these specific things. You know, I'm in long-term recovery for mental health and for this. You know, I think that that is important because it helps people relate. I don't like labels, but labels are the way that we can help other people understand us and define things. And especially when we're reaching out to other people who may not know if they're being represented in an organization, that's very important as recovery leaders. And when you become a peer recovery specialist, you're a recovery leader. You're not an expert, and you're not the boss, and you're not the leader of what's going on in that moment or group, but you're certainly someone who is role modeling what recovery can be, and that hope and that resilience that we're looking for in our lives. And so being able to do that on a daily basis and in our conversations and using person-first language and recovery terminology and making sure that we are having those conversations like with professors and professionals when we hear those terms that are not okay, those are things that are really important. So when I hear people call other people in rather than calling out, it's amazing. And I think that those have been the things that have really helped. So also to respond to you, the organization that I came from is an organization called Robin's Hope. It's based in Chesterfield, and they have online free virtual support groups that support anybody in any kind of recovery, trauma, substance use, mental health, grief, what have you. So that's available, and there are spaces like that, but would you necessarily know about it if I didn't say something? So we have to also have conversations. Networking is a really important part of the things that I see people doing well in the spaces that I've been in. So I think that's my response. I keep doing that.
I really can't think of a whole lot to add to what's already been shared, but one of the questions that you talked about, Tom, was, what have we observed that our coworkers have either positively impacted or perhaps might still be struggling with. I've noticed that with the group that I'm able to participate in and work with friends in recovery, I'm able to do so because my partner has really great insurance. And I've seen that folks in our community don't have access to even getting like mental health prescriptions that they need, or access to treatment, and so that's one of the things that I just wanted to call out. And then what Chastain said about calling people in, I think that's really important to identify that we are all learning from each other and living this, trying to broaden our recovery community and allowing each other the time and space to learn.
As far as the stigma among medical providers, I'm not in a medical, I work for a community center, but I do know as far as with some of my clients, there's stigma once they let them know they have a substance use disorder. But the stigma within working that has affected myself and some of my coworkers in recovery is the training not given to us, and like Tom was saying, sometimes a person that, some of the coworkers that are not in recovery, especially being if you're an alumni, like I'm an alumni, it's like they, some of our values and things that we suggest are really not valued as much, and I believe there's a lot, like if we have a staff meeting, I believe there's a meeting before the meeting, it's just, it's something that really needs to be addressed. Even if you were a client or if you were a client, it doesn't matter, especially when it's a peer recovery specialist. A lot of times, they wouldn't even know anything about the client. They would not open up to them. They won't open up to them to certain things because they actually don't listen, And so there has been stigma as far as moving up in an organization or in a position. There's been stigma to where you can do this, but you can't do that, And so I'm sort of like a team player. It doesn't matter about your team playing and loyalty. I believe that if you're a team player, everybody can learn from everyone. We need both people that are not in recovery just as well as we need people that are in recovery to help with the clients that we have, getting through to them with some of the barriers coming out of a long time of incarceration. That's a big barrier. If someone's coming out and they have done 20 and 30 years, that's a whole nother ballgame. Some of them are not even, they don't even have a substance use disorder. That's mainly the mental health piece, that I deal with them. With that, it's just like being on the same page. I just believe that everyone should be on the same page and work together. And in a lot of the organizations, not just the one that I work for, they're not on the same page. Page, and I frequent a lot of different organizations. I educate myself on a lot of different organizations. It's not just a one-size-fit, like what Jan showed us. It's not. And sometimes it may not be a fit, and the reoccurrence is another, that's another issue. If a person has a reoccurrence, they should either be directed to somewhere, or not just left alone. I mean, you know, everybody has certain issues that they reoccur. If it was a substance use disorder, and they had a stroke because they weren't eating properly, I mean, you're not just going to leave them alone. And I think being a peer recovery specialist with me, as far as, you know, being able to like pinpoint that part when they're not the same, and, you know, pinpoint that mental health piece where they're quiet, or they may be overwhelmed, and sometimes they're pushed into things that they may not feel comfortable, but they don't know how to say that I'm not comfortable with doing a certain thing. I mean, you know, a lot of the clients, I feel like my own opinion is like they're not poster people for the organizations. They're human beings. And I think they should be treated that way and should be asked, are you comfortable with doing this? You know, don't just put me up there and I'm not comfortable and I really don't even know what's going on. Educate, educate them on, you know, what's going on. And with different things that I believe that most of the people, a lot of the people in the organizations need to be educated a whole lot with culture and diversity. If someone comes in and they're gay or lesbian, that's a person to me. You know, it's not like, well, direct them somewhere else. I don't think they'll be a good fit in the house. They're a person. It doesn't matter. You know, I'm there to help you. I don't care about what your sexual orientation is or your race or whatever. I'm there to help you, the person.
Awesome. Let's do just rapid fire. What keeps you kind of coming to work? What keeps you doing this work? You know, as a professional, I think, you know, that's the option always on the table, is like, okay, I can step back and just focus on my own recovery and go do something else. So kind of what keeps you on this path, keeps you getting up and going to class, and or, you know, your way of being involved in this space in more than just your personal recovery. Just kind of rapid fire answers.
It's my life's purpose, and I think that I had to go through the struggles I went through and overcome them in order to help others. So I think pain is information, and I view it as those struggles as learning opportunities and also necessary for growth. Pain is necessary for growth. And also pain is information, so just figuring out what that information is and how it can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. The human condition is suffering, and that's the thing that connects us all. And I want to take the things that I've experienced in my life and try to make the path easier for others if I can, and just share the resources that I've learned and learn more resources from them and connect with people. And one of the things that I heard in my peer recovery specialist training back in 2020 was that we are in the system but not of the system. And I am personally dedicated to dismantling the mental health system as it stands right now, because it's sick. It's not healthy. It needs to be broken down and then rebuilt from the inside as something better.
I think I can easily sum it up by saying that I have the most amazing opportunity to witness miracles on a regular basis in all of the spaces that I get to work in, and especially those aha moments when I identify, I feel very comfortable coming out to you all. I'm a fat person. A person that lives in a larger body, and when we can say that and be comfortable with it, people that are affected, it's like a ripple effect. Okay, yeah, we get to normalize this too, and so I really love those aha moments and being part of communities where we can positively impact each other and change old patterns of thinking.
What keeps me coming back is basically the same thing, is helping, another person to, to thrive. Just watching them daily, thrive, and just being there to support them. That's basically why I keep coming back, to be educated, to give back, what was given to me. It's basically why I keep coming back, every day.
Awesome. Can we give a big round of applause?